Ooh, welcome to the Dynasty Vipers ViperCast. This is episode 12. Yes, we have made it 12 episodes with 2 or 3 people watching us each and every week, helping you get better than the rest of your crew. I am Coach Dingus Ford, Matt Donnelly, also known as the Devil's Juju. And with me this week, as always, in a very sexy 1964 style hotel room, Kelvin and Hobby. What's up, Kelvin?
What's up? Yeah, I'm out traveling this week, and I got the nice hotel thing going on. The lighting is dim. The painting in the background, it's nice.
Yeah, all you need right now is like my mustache, some bell bottoms, and like a case of cocaine, and you are like set for 1963 right now. It's fantastic. That yellow background it makes the moment right now.
It's great.
It is if you're just listening to us on the podcast, you're not actually watching the live stream video. It is like if you were pissing mustard all over the walls. That's basically the room he's staying in right now. It's fantastic. It's glorious.
I was trying to figure out this painting behind me. It looks like it might be a bull, maybe. I'm pretty sure that's a horn, and there's an eyeball down here. But it's interesting. So if it helps, I'm in Texas, so that might explain why there is a painting of a bull up there.
Is that like wallpaper there, like wall paste paper kind of on the back?
Yeah, it looks like it. I mean, it's definitely from the 70s. I am not sure if it was put here then or just trying to give that look. I'm guessing trying to give that look.
That is fantastic.
Mm-hmm.
I haven't seen that since before like my grandmother passed away in her old house there.
So are you like me when do you do much going around with your day job, and do you ever go and stay in a hotel or do something away from your normal day to day?
Define normal day to day, because not many people consider like 8 kids running around as normal day to day. The only difference between me and Philip Rivers is I haven't thrown 7 INTs in 2 weeks. That's the only difference between me and Philip Rivers right now. My wife, she gets out quite a bit with work. They send her away on the airplane and stuff like that. Me, I don't really get out very often for work-related activities. So
I find myself doing things I would never do at home. Like, for instance, I went to Chipotle just before coming onto this podcast, and I literally there's a Chipotle right by my house. I have never gone. I'm 6 hours away from home, and for whatever reason, I was like, "Hey, there's a Chipotle. I'll go there."
I've never been to a Chipotle. Let's go check this place out.
Why not?
Meanwhile, it's around the corner there.
Right. Right. So, I don't know. I'm out of town. I'm a different person.
Well, I don't blame you. Like when I do get the opportunity to go out of town, I do all kinds of things I don't normally do, like relax, enjoy peace and quiet. Right now, you're gonna hear some background noise. It's kind of the kids trying to settle in for the night here. So I'm kind of running solo here. And, if I see a little eyeball pop up, someone watching, it's probably the wife checking in on me.
Nice. Well, so speaking of people doing things they aren't used to doing, the Raiders have a pretty legit shot at the playoffs this season, huh?
Well, if you look at their little way it's going to start stacking up down the stretch here, let's not forget they've also got the tiebreaker on the Colts. So depending on how that all shapes out right now, they have the tiebreaker on the Colts, and I do believe the Texans have the tiebreaker the Colts have the tiebreaker on the Texans right now. Is that how it works out? Is that why the Colts are ahead of the Texans?
Did they? Yeah, they beat. Yeah. Jacoby Brissett had like 4 touchdowns or whatever in that game. Yeah, they beat the Texans.
So it's starting to become like a war of nutrition out there, because it's starting to get in a bit of a cluster there. Because you got the Texans, you've got the Colts, I believe, at 6-4. You've got the Steelers right there in the mix. You've got the Kansas City Chiefs only at 7-4, only half a game up on the Raiders. We had the Raiders got a very winnable game this week against the Jets, so they could be 7-4. heading into a Week 13 showdown with the Chiefs, with the division on the line, so to speak.
In Kansas City.
In Kansas City, yeah.
Yeah.
And some other things are kind of going on there. The Titans are right there in the race, but it's going to be an interesting stretch. Like, we talked about this all year long, and I kind of figured 8-8 was kind of the benchmark for the Raiders this season. That would have been where I've been happy at, 8-8 record. And it's still very possible. Anyone who knows the Raiders knows things can fall apart pretty quickly.
Well, would you be happy with 8-8 at this point now, though? Like, 6-4 with, if you look at the teams they've played a pretty tough schedule. I mean, there's a good bit of playoff teams on that schedule. So, yeah, they've got some playoff teams left, maybe 2.
Yeah, so before the season started, the Raiders had the number 1 ranked schedule going against them.
Yeah.
They have the toughest schedule going in. And now they're at a point in their season right now where they have the 4th easiest schedule the rest of the way out. So, Raider Nation, playoffs are a very strong possibility at this point, but we know not to hold our breath as a nation here right now because things have gone south in a hurry on us in the past. Saints fans, you're almost waiting for the other leg to fall off too. You had the PI call. You guys have had your own fair share of things go against you in the last few years too. Yeah, and you kind of sit back. You're like, I'm a big time Raiders fan, but I know I'm not going to go running my mouth off on. We're going to go 10-6. We're going to make the playoffs. I'm going to pump the brakes a little bit because I always had in the back of my mind, I've already put enough enough Devil's juju on my fantasy rosters right now. I don't want this to go into my fandom here, which brings me to a point here. What means more to you? Your New Orleans Saints, your team, your fandom, or your fantasy rosters?
So right now, I'd say the Saints. There has been a time in my life where I would have said my fantasy team. Now that I'm in so many leagues and kind of doing some of this, I don't know if that's taken a little bit of not that I don't care. It's like I care a little bit more about doing this kind of stuff. Like I love answering questions and, digging into the details and doing the box score and all that. On Sundays, I find myself really rooting for the Saints. And but the thing is, like you mentioned, you alluded to, the last 2 seasons have ended just completely tragically for the Saints. My 11-year-old became a fan 2 years ago, and all he has known is the Minnesota Miracle and then that game against the Rams last year as the way a season ends. So I guess I don't know what to expect. Like, yes, I'm glad it looks like the Saints are going to be going to the playoffs here, but at what point could you even feel like the rug's not going to be pulled out underneath you? Would it have to be like a minute left in the 4th quarter of the Super Bowl and up by 3 touchdowns? At what point, would I ever be able this season to feel comfortable?
I don't think you feel comfortable until Drew Brees is hoisting that Lombardi.
Yeah.
I think then you feel comfortable.
Right.
My children are like my group of children on the younger end of the spectrum. They're like 10 and 5. So they've never known the Raiders to be a winning team. They had that one season there, and then Derek Carr broke his leg, and that was the end of the season right there. Yeah. And the Texans beat us in the playoffs. But other than that, it's been a very difficult thing. But they still think the Raiders are the greatest team of all time.
Right.
Because that's Daddy's team. So they're automatically Raiders fans. They don't know any better.
Right.
There's nothing else in this house other than hockey and Raiders. So,
Yep.
I don't even have that much Roll Tide stuff in here anymore.
Well,
we'll get into that a little bit. Which looks like, speaking of Rolling Tide, it looks like Tua Tagovailoa is going to have a lot in common with a former Raider and Bo Jackson by the sounds of it. Now, I just want to kind of touch base on this, on the labral tear of the hip. Now, I am so glad to see Tua there in the hospital, playing the ukulele, enjoying life, because what he has ahead of him is a long and frustrating recovery.
Man,
I've had this surgery on both my hips.
Oh, no way.
It is ridiculously painful. It's boring. It's monotonous. Now, good thing for Tua, he's in a lot better shape than I've ever been in. He should recover a lot better than I am. There is going to be a huge risk of arthritis in that hip, even when he's fully healthy. I don't think we will ever see him at where he is. I hope we do. I hope we see Tua back to where he was at one point. But if you're looking at your 2020 Devy drafts and your fantasy drafts, Tua's going to take a bit of a hit. He's going to drop in the NFL draft as well because of this, because that arthritis in that hip will flare up in 5, 6, 7 years from now. You may only get 5 years out of Tua, 6 years out of Tua. Who knows? Maybe modern medicine's come a long way since Bo Jackson had his issue there with his hip.
Yeah.
But from a personal experience, now I'm not saying I'm any kind of athlete, but having that surgery, the frustration level behind it, you feel like nothing because you got to sit there. You literally have to sit in a certain position for 3 months straight before you can do anything. Like you cannot go past 90 degrees. So you are doing like a horizontal turd drop on the toilet. You are literally dropping turds like this because you cannot sit at a 90-degree angle.
That sounds terrible.
It is. And I've done it twice.
Oh my gosh. What?
Back to the devil's juju got me a long time ago.
That sounds terrible. Like I tore my ACL, MCL like 15 years ago, whatever. And I had about 6 weeks where my left leg, the one that I tore the ACL in, I could not bend it. Like it was straight. And I had to go through a lot of physical therapy just to get to where I could bend it. Yep. And that was miserable. Just not being able to use your body the way that you normally do. And I think being, landlocked in a way of where you are just kind of like, I had to sit on the bed and watch like Seinfeld and stuff like that. And yeah, that was miserable. So what you just said about going through 3 months of that sounds awful.
And that was even before the rehab can start.
Yeah.
He's probably 7 months away from even throwing a football at this point.
So he's not going to get to work out for teams before the draft.
No, I can't see it. Now, saying that he's like 19 years old, his body's still pretty good. He's a fantastic athlete. I'm sure he'll heal a lot quicker than I did. I had these surgeries in my 30s, so
yeah,
I wasn't healing very fast.
That makes a difference, but it's obviously going to affect his draft stock. I mean, how many quarterbacks do you think now go ahead of him?
Oh boy, I would imagine you're looking at guys. Obviously, Burrow's going to go ahead of him. Who he would have been. You could have made the argument either way about 3 weeks ago. Fromm might go ahead of him. Easton will probably go ahead of him. I could see Jalen Hurts go ahead of him now. I could see him dropping here considerably, like second, third round kind of.
Whoa!
If he declares, he may not even declare now. He may take a medical redshirt year and get his degree or whatever he's working on at the University of Alabama as well.
And then come out next year. Yeah, that's interesting. That's interesting. He'd have to probably get some assurances before he declared, I would guess. Gosh, that's going to be fascinating to watch as it unfolds, for sure. Yeah,
and I would be interested to see if he already had some sort of insurance on him, because I know a lot of these guys do put insurance on their bodies in that last season in the event of something happening. Ever since Jalen Smith there had his nasty injury years ago, teams have been a little bit smarter on how – our players have been a lot smarter going into this draft process, taking care of themselves and their future.
Right. Yeah, that's it was really unfortunate. I mean, you hate to see that, and there was part of me that really thought Alabama had a chance to still make it into the playoffs. I guess they still could, but I guess now at this point it would be just a very different story. And hopefully they can still do well. I mean, I know that's your team, but it could be the first time. Maybe it would be the first time since the BCS was even around that Alabama doesn't make the playoffs.
Yeah, it would be actually. They've been in. Them and I think Clemson have been in every year since the BCS kicked off.
Crazy.
And I can see it's going to be a very difficult climb for them now. I know they've only got the one loss. They'll probably end up with one loss. The Georgia and LSU game is going to be huge for the SEC championship, because now Georgia could be a 2-loss team as opposed to Alabama being a 1-loss team. Things could get interesting there, but we'll have to see how Alabama recovers from this news. They should be good enough to win and finish the season with one loss, but
they need some points.
It's not the same offense with Tua out of there. We've seen that already. Although Najee Harris has been carrying that team
Yeah.
the last couple of weeks, even with Tua limited with that ankle injury. So
they probably need to beat Auburn by like 3 touchdowns. Though that's if they can do something like that, then yeah, maybe they they have a chance to still get in. It's going to be about style points. It's going to be how much can they make sure people look and see, the voters look and see that they're still the same old Alabama. And I don't know. I have my doubts on that.
Yeah, they're going to have to win that rivalry game against Auburn to even have a shot. And Auburn's a very, very good team in their own right. So that's going to make things really interesting here.
For sure.
With Bo Nix and company.
So Burrows is going to be a Bengal then. Interesting.
Yeah, it's looking like that unless they think Ryan Finley's better than him.
Yeah, no way.
They have Ryan Finley. Apparently they decide to give Andy Dalton the shaft there. And I can't see A.J. Green wanting to come back for the Bengals here anytime soon now that Andy Dalton got the shaft. So,
yeah. Interesting. Now Tyler Boyd wants the ball. You think they beat Pittsburgh this week?
Man, that is a game I do not want to watch in any way, shape, or form.
Mason Rudolph is not exactly playing lights out right now, and Ryan Finley might be the better quarterback in the game.
I wouldn't disagree with that. Like I had to think about that for a second here. But what part of Mason Rudolph's game right now has even given you the slightest inclination that he could be a serviceable quarterback going forward?
Not much. And not much about what he has said since Thursday has made me feel good about him as a person either. Even though, like, I wish he didn't get hit in the head with the helmet, and that could have gone a lot worse than it did. But, man, I wish he would have been a lot better off saying nothing for the last week, if you ask me.
Well, he could always blame it on the hit to the head with the helmet, too, anything that he says now at this point.
Right.
But yeah, I'm looking at that matchup right now, and honestly, if Juju's still out and James Conner's not in that lineup, I could see the Bengals getting their first win of the season.
Well, and Deontay Johnson may not even be in. Let's see how he progresses. So you got James Washington and question mark. You've got.
I've seen this week that the best receiver for the Pittsburgh Steelers might not even be on their roster yet. Terrell Pryor wants to play for the Pittsburgh Steelers.
There we go. All right.
And I think he'd be their best wide receiver right now, the way things are shaping up in Pittsburgh. Which, again, as a Raiders fan, the Steelers are one of those teams that are right there that are in that wild card hunt that you kind of wanted to get a little bit distance from. And
don't forget about Kevin Holton, Mr. 12 targets and no catches, or whatever he was, 15 targets.
Yeah, we know all about him. We know about Holton here in Oakland.
Yeah.
So,
we're
not too concerned about that. But really, if I'm looking at this outside of that Steelers offensive line and defensive line, well, even the defensive lines are pretty close.
Yeah.
Carlos Dunlap, Geno Akins, Sam Hubbard, they all look pretty solid against the Raiders. And that's a good Raiders O-line. So they came to play last week. Now, saying that, Cincinnati still has one of the worst, if not the worst, offensive lines in football. And there has not been a more disruptive, arguably there hasn't been a more disruptive player on the defensive line, especially on the interior, than Cameron Hayward has been for the Pittsburgh Steelers the last few weeks. He has absolutely balled out. TJ Watt could have 12 sacks this week.
He's amazing.
Like we're talking about my boy Max Crosby had 4 sacks against the Bengals. He could have 5 sacks, TJ Watt. That's how good TJ Watt is, and that's how bad the Bengals line is.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know who I'd put money on this week between the Steelers and the Bengals.
They're gonna need those guys on the defensive side to ball out, I think. But that offense is so bad right now. They've won a lot with that defense, and I mean that'd be the way that they need to get it done here. And Cincinnati is really bad, so maybe they come out and look a little bit better this week. But you heard it here first. Pittsburgh going down this week to Cincinnati.
Yeah, I'm not going to disagree. I'm not going to agree. I'm not going to disagree. But I'm looking at this. Like we talk about James Conner's injury right now. Last week, Trey Edmonds had 6 rushes, 6 targets, somewhere in that ballpark combined. Jalen Samuels, you think would be the de facto number one. He had 11 rushes and targets combined, but he only had 34% of the snap count. 47% of that snap count went to Trey Edmonds. Where on the flip side, Joe Mixon, like people think Joe Mixon, he had a good game against the Raiders. He put up some numbers. He was only in on 49 or 59% of the snaps against Oakland. Gio Bernard still factored into 52%. He only got 6 targets and touches, and Gio had 18 touches, and he made the most of those against the Raiders.
The only thing I'd say about that is, yes, that's 100% true. Mixon getting in the 58% of the snaps, and that is maybe slightly less than he had gotten the previous week, like against Baltimore. He had 76, but his average this season is 56%. So it's kind of right in line with where they've been keeping him. What has gone up for him is now that Ryan Finley is on board, they've been really running the ball, and game script doesn't even really seem to matter. They seem to be committed to establishing the run almost no matter what is going on. Like against Baltimore, they got blown out by 40 and he ran the ball 30 times. I'd be curious how many times in NFL history that has ever even happened, because you just never see that. A team is getting blown out like that and they run the ball. He got a decent amount of touches this week too, but not near what he had against Baltimore. If they continue to feed him the ball, I really like what Joe Mixon could do to close the year.
Yeah, and opportunity is what you're looking for here, right? Mm-hmm. Especially if you're trying to build something. If you're one of those teams that's set in your playoff ways, he's a guy you want to go out and try and acquire, maybe a 2-for-1 type of trade. Give a couple lower end, middle tier kind of guys for a Joe Mixon. Guys you probably wouldn't normally start on your team. Like if you've got your set starting lineup, sending a couple guys, maybe a flex and a bench guy for a Joe Mixon could be an upgrade that could help put you over the top come your playoff time.
I tried unsuccessfully this past week. Speaking of trying to acquire Joe Mixon, I tried to do that by trying to send Aaron Jones for Joe Mixon. Yeah, see that eyebrow.
Okay, so 90% of the people in the world would call you a genius.
You think? I would think the opposite. I would think 90% would say that.
No, I was being sarcastic in every way, shape, and form.
Okay, good.
I would do it because I hate Aaron Jones. I'm Team Jamal Williams, and I would stand on that hill and die on it.
Yeah.
But Aaron Jones right now is by far the better back in fantasy football with a better situation than Joe Mixon at this time. So I would think if you're in a trading thing right now, you are the guy who's going to want Aaron Jones. So the fact that he declined your offer kind of baffles me in itself. He must be Team Jamal as well.
He might be, but here's what worries me. Now it's in a dynasty league, so I think an argument can be made, maybe even better when you think about dynasty, about wanting Joe Mixon over Aaron Jones. You assume the Bengals are not going to be this bad forever. I think even right now to close this year, I would rather have Joe Mixon. And I say that because now that could end up being the stupidest thing I've said all year, which would probably be saying something. But I'm a little worried with Davante Adams coming back, the role that Aaron Jones has. And if you look just the last 2 weeks, now this is with Davante Adams coming back. Against the Chargers, he had 9 touches. And against Carolina, he had 13 touches. So his workload, and where you see it is in his targets. He's gotten so few targets now. He had gone all the way up to 8 against Kansas City in week 8, and he'd been hovering around that 7-8 mark for a few of those weeks. He got 3 against the Chargers and none against Carolina. Now, maybe they go back to that at some point, but he had a huge game against Carolina because he got in the end zone. That's what he's been able to do on limited touches, which is help, but 3 touchdowns with 13 touches is not going to continue to happen.
So let's talk about that a little bit here. Look at that. What was the snap count? Do you recall what the snap count was between him and Jamal Williams last week?
Well, so
week 11?
Yeah, 34 snaps for Aaron Jones, and Mr. Jamal Williams had 34.
Exactly. 50-50 split down the stretch. The touches were 13 for Jones, 14 for Williams.
Yeah.
If I'm an Aaron Jones, and you know me, I'm Team Jamal here. I'm Team Jamal because there's no one who talks about Frozen and mermaids and stuff, and his interviews are fantastic. He's just you gotta love the guy. You know what I mean? You gotta love. Did you ever go and YouTube some of his interviews yet or no?
No.
Oh, you got it. He'll change your mind. You'll become Team Jamal right after you listen to his interviews.
Okay.
But you're talking about a very interesting situation there between Williams and Jones, where they're both RB2s with RB1 upside.
Yeah.
They're flex. Williams is a flex at worst. Now, Jones has been doing a little bit more with his opportunities right now than, say, Williams has. But Williams has had a couple games where he's gone off too. So if you look at the stats going throughout the whole season, I bet you that snap count is pretty close to a 55-45 throughout the season. I don't think there's a whole lot of difference between the two. Whereas Joe Mixon, he's the lead dog. He's getting that 60% range right now. And he is getting, that's of the snaps, but he's getting probably between the running back position about 75% of the touches that are being handed.
Well, that's where he's dominating. And that's with running backs, you do have to, if you get a running back that's 50 to 60%, that's probably your lead back. They don't make very many Christian McCaffreys that's taken 99, 100% of the snaps. That just doesn't happen a lot. You want to be, somewhere in that 50, 60% range. But where you really have to drill down with running backs is exactly what you said, is on touches. And yes, he's dominating touches out of the backfield. Whereas, Aaron Jones and Jamal Williams is very different. They are used in tandem a lot, even if you have weeks where the snaps are not necessarily identical.
So let's kind of go back here. Let's kind of look at our crystal ball here, because I want to talk about a player that I'm going to kind of mention here that might kind of catch you off guard here. Is in terms of touches, not just the snap count here. Who do you think led week 11 in touches at the running back position?
In touches at the running back position. I won't look it up. Touches at the running back position. Carlos Hyde.
Oh, no, that's not even close, man. He only had 10 touches.
No, he only had 10?
He only had 10 touches.
Oh.
He only had 34% of the snaps. Actually, Duke Johnson was the lead back there at 59% of the snaps with 8 touches.
Nice.
Well, I'm tired of waiting for you.
Okay.
So, Christian McCaffrey, no surprise. 93% of the snaps, 28 touches.
Yeah.
Not a big shot. Or rushing attempts and targets, we'll call it. Next, tied with 28 was Chubb. Again, not a big shocker. Chubb again had 28 rushing attempts and targets combined. Mm-hmm. Now, the one that kind of might catch you off guard is the resurrection, brother, of Todd Gurley.
I was just skimming through and I saw 25 carries.
And 3 targets.
Interesting.
75% of the snap count. The LA Rams got away from that zone running scheme that they'd been running all year. And they had a couple of those guys on the left side, rookies, where they decided, you know what, let's man up and let's pound this rock. And Gurley was breaking off some solid runs for him.
Yeah.
He didn't look as explosive as he has in the past, but he's coming off an injury from last season that's kind of tailed into this season. And this is the best we've seen Todd Gurley look. Almost giving you that hope that, you know what, this is a guy that maybe I could still get at a discount to help me in my playoff push this year.
So, okay, having said that, and you said crystal ball now, let's just look at week 12. Now, it's one thing with the Akeem Hicks-less Chicago Bears. What would you set the over-under on his touches in week 12 against Baltimore?
Oh boy, Baltimore. I think he's going to be a factor. Brandon Cooks, I don't know, is back. Robert Woods, we don't know what's going on with Robert Woods. He was a last minute scratch for personal reasons that I haven't heard anything of. I don't know if anything's out there yet. Mm-hmm. So that basically leaves you with Cooper Kupp. Did Gerald Everett even make an appearance for the Rams?
Yeah, not much. He looked hurt to me, but I mean, he was there.
So we're talking about a Rams team with Jared Goff, who is doing his best Mitch Trubisky impression right now because he looks horrible out there as well.
Terrible.
This could be a heavy touch target game again for Todd Gurley. Now, will he be able to do anything with those touches and targets against a very stingy Ravens defense? I don't know. But I do believe he could be a solid play in PPR. I think we'll see more than 3 targets for Todd Gurley, especially next week. Because Marlon Humphrey, he's going to lock down on Cooper Kupp. Mm-hmm. And Marcus Peters is going to go lock up on Josh Reynolds, I guess.
He's been good. Marcus Peters has been a good Raven.
Yes, he's been a solid addition, but I'm just saying it's more of an indication of Josh Reynolds more than anything.
Right.
So that leaves you with Todd Gurley as a best option. And reality is, I don't know a linebacker on the Ravens that's really in Todd Gurley's range. They're going to probably have to bring a safety in the box at all times. It'd be nice to see Robert Woods back this week just to kind of give it a little bit more of a 3. They're a lot better. We've seen the Rams play without Brandon Cooks in the past, and Josh Reynolds has been serviceable as a number 3 option. Reynolds is not a number 2 right now. He could develop into a number 2, but he's not a number 2.
Yeah.
We need Robert Woods back in that lineup this week. If they can get him, I'm not going to say they're going to beat the Ravens. In fact, I think the Ravens win this game easily, especially because of Jared Goff and his incompetence so far in the last few weeks. Actually, for most of the season, to be honest with you. I think he's had one good game all year.
Well, even if you get Gerald Everett back, like the Ravens are second in the NFL at limiting fantasy points to tight ends. They are very good. Well, and at second since week.
Well, that's because that's the only thing the Ravens practice against are tight ends. They don't get a practice against wide receivers. All they do is practice against tight ends every single week.
That's a good point. They're bottom 6 or 7 in the league against wide receivers, and they are. And this is since week 8. So I gave Marcus Peters some time to get acclimated, and so looking since week 8. I mean, I don't even know how you attack this team. They're middle of the pack against running backs at giving up fantasy points. So yeah, I mean, you may be onto something. That may be how the Rams end up doing it. But again, if you got Lamar Jackson scoring on your defense, and you're up 21-3 at halftime, it may have to come from him getting targets out of the backfield.
I think that's what we're going to see. I'm not sure we're going to see much Malcolm Brown this week. We didn't see much of him last week either. If you look at the numbers there on the stock market exchange, I think he was on 20% of the time with 5 total targets and touches. So
yeah, really disappointed to see what's happened with Darrell Henderson. He had gotten to where one week he got almost 50% of the snaps against the Bengals, and that was going into the bye. And you thought, and he even out-touched Gurley. And you thought, man, maybe, just maybe, they're starting to ramp up where they're going to start utilizing him a little bit more. And then no, coming out of the bye, 10% of the snaps, then 5% of the snaps this past week. So yeah, unfortunately, that's a dynasty asset. We might have to wait for a while before that one cashes in, if ever.
So I'm going to give the people here that are listening, that people might come back in the league that I have the worst Devil's Juju action going on. Mm-hmm. So let's rewind this tape. So I put out there on Twitter, I had to trade a week 12 wide receiver. I'm trying to look ahead. So I put out there, who do I trade? Tyreek Hill, Stephon Diggs, or Keenan Allen. And Keenan Allen narrowly beat out Stephon Diggs. So Diggs was the guy out. I ran it off. Now, anyone who's in fantasy usually has 2 or 3 go-to guys for advice. And we all kind of lean towards Stephon Diggs. Now, I was leaning Stephon Diggs to begin with. That's kind of where I was going because I do like Keenan Allen's schedule. Diggs has a little bit easier schedule. Keenan Allen has a little bit better weather kind of going for him. So I kind of factored that in. So Keenan Allen, I was kind of leaning to keeping. Mm-hmm. Now, I thought I was being smart. I went out and I looked at schedules here, and we've talked about this in the past. We like the Jets schedule. We also like the Steelers schedule. We really liked what James Conner had coming down the pipeline. So I go, you know what? Let's do me a solid here. I'll trade you Stephon Diggs, James Conner. I get a week 12 fill in. I should do good this week. He's got a good matchup against the Browns. I'm feeling pretty good about myself. Boom, AC joint hits me again. And I'm like, are you kidding me right now? I'm like, I have the worst luck when I make a trade. I can give all kinds of trade advice to all kinds of people, but in this league, if I make a trade in this league, look out. It's got fantasy implications written all over it.
Well, you need to let us know. Like, that needs to be something that's announced with like the sirens. Like, if you acquire somebody, like I might want to know what your waiver priority is for this week, so I know how to set mine.
Well, it's funny you mentioned that. So in this league, you can only roster. Remember, I had this complication a few weeks back here. We talked about this. You can only roster 2 quarterbacks. My opponent, the guy I'm battling for the playoffs, you play a doubleheader. You got to play 2 matches every week. The guy I'm kind of battling, we're tied at 11-11 right now. Mm-hmm. His only quarterback on his roster is Patrick Mahomes. The only quarterback on my roster right now is Matt Ryan.
Okay.
Matt Ryan's playing the Bucs. I like that. I like that matchup for Matt Ryan this week. Baker Mayfield, who's playing the Dolphins, is on the waiver wire right now. Oh. You bet you I'm blowing my fob on him to make sure my opponent has to play Sam Darnold against me.
Interesting.
So if you're out there, Sam Darnold will outplay Baker Mayfield because I'm putting a bid on Baker Mayfield right now. So there's your little thing there right now to go and get him.
Take notes. Yeah. Adjust your rankings accordingly. You heard it here.
I lost this week by 0.32.
Oh, come on.
If I get one more assisted tackle on a stat correction, my record goes from 11-11 to 12-10, which puts me from 7th to 5th in the league. I am begging the fantasy gods, please give me 0.33 somehow. Give me another half a tackle. Give me a full tackle where the guy's got an assist. I don't care. Take half a tackle away from my opponent this week. Give me something. Because I've got a tough matchup this week. My roster this week, I am looking at starting. We know we're starting Matt Ryan. I'm going to bid on Baker Mayfield. And I got all the fab in the world right now. At running back, I'm going to have to start 2 or 3 of Gurley, Miles Sanders, and Jamal Williams this week.
How can it be Miles Sanders?
I don't know, but that's where I'm at right now because I have all those week 12 guys on bye. So at wide receiver, I'm going to have to start 2 or 3 of Terrell Williams, Terry McLaurin, and Davante Adams.
Whew, you guys are 2 of those?
At least 2. Probably 3, if I'm not, you know what I mean?
Yeah, I guess.
It's not. Now, one of the options I kind of threw out there, me and a buddy have been going back and forth, and Shane, if you're watching right now, we talked about this. We had a trade offer kind of sitting on the table where I would trade Davante Adams and Tyreek Hill for Saquon Barkley and Amari Cooper. Now, I am giving up more than I'm getting, in my opinion. However, I am getting a guy who's not on a week 12 bye right now. You cannot win your fantasy championship if you don't make the fantasy playoffs. I'm in a position where I'm shopping Tyreek Hill hard right now to get something back I can use this week.
Yeah. I made a similar trade last year where I traded Dalvin Cook away, and I got Amari Cooper and Tarik Cohen. Now, Tarik Cohen it's a little bit different because it's a return yardage league as well, so he's a little bit more valuable in those leagues. And I'd love to, as a dynasty league, I'd love to still have Dalvin Cook, but I've got Amari Cooper, and without making that move, I wouldn't have made the playoffs. So you're right. Sometimes you got to do things you got to do, and I think that's one of the things about dynasty that really is unique. And one of the things I like is that you can make that kind of trade where you are giving up more, but you're doing it in a way that's going to help you now, and a person who maybe is out of the playoffs can make a move that's going to help them later. Dynasty is fun like that. Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm kind of sitting here now. I've been kind of going back and forth with my boy here, Shane, just to kind of give you a breakdown, because my juju is real right now. It is real. So we kind of joked about that. I go, who should I curse this week? I'm about to do my podcast for visual proof. And he goes, go away, monster. I don't want any part of this. I go, it's happening. There's going to be a dark cloud all over the fantasy world when I get done with this. And he goes, I don't want to know. I got matches to win this week. He goes, I'm going to block you until the fantasy season ends.
Nice.
This is the love I got out here right now, but I don't know what to do here. I'm stuck. I was kind of hoping Jim was going to swing by here and kind of talk me off the cliff here and give me some advice, because I'm really struggling on what to do with this one lineup. And the worst part is the guy I'm looking at possibly making the trade with also plays the guy I'm tied with for that last playoff spot. So I need him. So in the double headers, so it's funny because this league is so close right now. Like, I'm 7th at 11-11. First place is 15-7. So we're all bunched right there. And earlier this season,
that can be erased fast.
I've put up the highest score in a single week so far. And my roster can do it, but my roster's been dinged up and it's banged up, and I'm sitting here. I'm like, hey, what am I going to do? Like, I've got to do something, because
what's the waiver wire? Anything?
No, nothing that's going to help me. Robbie Anderson's probably the best name out there. And normally I would suggest going out. We've actually been pushing Robbie Anderson in the last couple of weeks. And yes, he scored last week, but he didn't have much opportunity. He wasn't on the field. Well, he was on the field, but he wasn't making any opportunities for himself. He didn't have very many targets. He had fewer catches, but he did have that touchdown to kind of bail you out a little bit. I think he only had like 8 fantasy points last season. That's with a touchdown.
Yeah, he's been perplexing to me because his snaps have not suffered at all. What's continued to trend down, though, is his targets. And even this week, it went from week 7 he had 8, week 8 he had 6, week 9 he had 4, week 10 he had 3, week 11 he had 3. So it's just continuing to trend down with him, and he's been one of the biggest disappointments for me as it comes up near this really good part of their schedule. But having said that, I was going to mention, you talked about Sam Darnold. Sam Darnold has actually been able to take advantage of this schedule. And it didn't start off hot against Miami, where he only had 17 points. But then he put up 24 points against the Giants, 30 points last week against the Redskins. And now he gets Oakland this week. He gets Cincinnati the next week. He goes back to Miami. We'll see how that works. But Sam Darnold has actually been taking advantage of this part of his schedule, and somehow Adam Gase has not ruined him enough where he can't put up points against these defenses.
Yeah, that might be one of my other little plays here where I go out and I grab Robbie Anderson. If my opponent goes out and gets Sam Darnold as quarterback, I may have to go out and get Robbie Anderson and plug him into my lineup, just to kind of capitalize on any possible, like, there's no friends in fantasy. Once you get to this point of the year, there's no friends. You got to go after any way you possibly can. And like I said, the one guy I'm talking about making a trade with, he's playing the 2 guys I'm trying to catch right now in the playoffs. So it's hard for me to make a trade with him because I need him to win his matches too.
Yeah. The guy that you might consider if you're trying to play strategy on that who's probably available is Demaryius Thomas. His target share has been pretty good. And it fluctuates a little bit. He's been as high as 9. 3 times this year he's got 9 targets, and then he's been at 5 and 4 and a couple threes in there. But Demaryius Thomas is a guy that I went and just made sure he was available in all my leagues, because before this past week, his targets since the bye, his targets surprisingly are very similar to Jamison Crowder. Jamison Crowder has had 45 targets since the bye. Demaryius Thomas has had 44, whereas Robbie Anderson has only had 35.
Well, we talk about Demaryius Thomas against the Eagles. He had 9, Cowboys 4, Patriots 9, the Jags 5, Dolphins 3, Giants 9, Redskins 5 last week. He made 4 catches on those 5 for the 44 yards.
He's the only thing that he doesn't have is touchdowns, and Jamison Crowder has been the guy that scored. Jamison Crowder has 3 since the bye. Robbie Anderson has 2 since the bye. But Demaryius Thomas has put up 28 catches, 361 yards since their bye, whereas Robbie Anderson has 15 for 244. I really like Robbie Anderson. I'm not sure what's happened, but he is clearly just not – I don't know if it's not in favor. I don't know if he's getting Adam Gase like Devontae Parker did, but he is not just not producing the way that I feel like he should, and hopefully he does. There was rumors of him being traded. I hope he ends up somewhere else next year.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to see where he goes, where the landing spot's going to be key for him. He's got talent. We know that. We've seen it. Last year he was big. He was one of those guys that was probably on a lot of league-winning rosters.
Yeah.
This year, not so much. And I got to say, I haven't owned him anywhere, so I cannot take credit for this one. My opponents. You know what? We're gonna do a new start sit column. I'm gonna go off just this one league. Anyone I'm starting on my lineup is an automatic sit.
Automatic.
Okay?
Yeah.
Because the weekly matchup I had last week should have been easily all mine. And this is where it hurts because I had Tarik Hill going, right? Put up a 0 for me. So the matchup I lost by point. What they got it now? It's 0.31 is the difference. He had Carson Wentz, Frank Gore, LaShawn McCoy. LaShawn McCoy had 29 yards rushing, 28 yards receiving, and the touchdown.
Yeah.
DJ Chark went off. Randall Cobb went off. Jarvis Landry had a touchdown and 43 yards. Jason Witten had 5 catches. This is half-point PPR. I'm like, you've got to be kidding me. So I'm sitting here. I'm like, okay. I'm looking at before the week starts. I'm like, I'm in a good spot. I got Matt Ryan. I got Todd Gurley, James Conner. I'm feeling pretty good. Keenan Allen, Tyreek Hill, Terrell Williams against Cincinnati, and Greg Olsen. I'm feeling good about myself. Tyreek Hill doesn't even get a catch. If Tyreek Hill gets a catch before his injury, I win. This is why fantasy football is such a cruel mistress to so many of us.
Yes.
So many of us.
Yes, it is.
And now I got to wait for fantasy football's cruel sister stat corrections to hopefully bail me out on Thursday.
Is Nicole Hartman available in that league?
Yes, he is, but he's on bye, so it doesn't do me a whole lot of good.
Oh, crap. That's right.
Remember the whole Tyreek Hill being on a bye and their teammates, and it makes it kind of difficult.
Yeah. Duh.
But if I get into the playoffs, I'll go get him.
Yeah, because, man, I really like him. Now, it didn't show up in the stat sheet this week, and he, unfortunately, with them being healthy, he wasn't playing a whole lot. Now, he got on the field a lot more this past week, but he's the kind of guy that just seems to make something happen almost every time he touches the ball. It feels exciting, whereas when Sammy Watkins has the ball, it feels like the opposite, where it's just not exciting. Nicole Hartman, he really does. Like, he could every time I watch him, I'm impressed, and I like what he does. And if he's available in any leagues, that's a guy I want.
Well, Nicole Hartman there, he actually hangs on to the ball. That's actually considered a catch when he gets it. Sammy Watkins never actually catches the ball.
True.
I wonder how he would be a fantastic DB.
He probably would be. Yeah. He probably would be. You're right.
Good size, good speed. We know he can knock a ball down. Let's Sammy Watkins for IDP. Let's get that hashtag going.
If nothing else, he has proved that he can. Yeah, I wonder if you can count that as a pass defense. Anytime he gets the ball, like that should count on IDP as a pass defense.
Well, I'm thinking so. At least you should count for your DST one way or the other.
Yeah.
Pass defended. Right to Sammy Watkins.
Yes, exactly.
So, I'm kind of looking here. I'm just going to pull up who I'm playing here this week in that one league just to give the people a good idea who to start. Starting lineups, we're going to pull it up here right now. It looks like my opponents are starting the same people I mentioned last week. Brian Hill against the Bucks. I still wouldn't touch that one. The Bucks have a stingy run defense, so I'm going to avoid that.
Mm-hmm.
Philip Lindsay against the Bills. That's a tough matchup. Jalen Samuels, we talked about that snap count he's getting in the touches and targets. Not so much. So right now, this looks really good for me. He's also starting Alshon Jeffrey and Robert Woods as we speak.
So start all of those people.
Start them all.
Yeah.
Start them all this week because it looks bad. The matchups look horrible, but he's playing against me, and my playoffs are on the line. Those guys are all going to go off.
The most important stat is they are being played against you. And, that matters more than where the Bills are ranked defensively. Like Philip Lindsay, we're getting them in there. No doubt.
Oh, and I guarantee you Jamal Adams on his IDP is going for a pick 6 and at least 3 more sacks. So,
he's good.
You ever have one of those years where everything goes against you? Like, it doesn't matter what it is. It just goes against you.
Yeah.
And I like to think of myself as a pretty good analyst. I know what's going on. I break down the film. I watch stuff. But fantasy football, there is a certain percentage of pure luck that goes into every single week.
Yeah.
Like look at Mark Ingram's stat line last week.
Mm-hmm.
Take away those touchdowns. Take away the touchdowns from Mark Ingram and tell me what you see.
Well, what I see is a really good running back who can catch the ball well and can score touchdowns. So I see the good things that he does and say he's really good at them. And there's been a lot of you're not the only one. A lot of people have been hating on Mark Ingram this week for some reason. And I get it. There's some underlying things, but he is the clear starting best running back on is the best offense in football. Who's better?
It's definitely one of the more fun offenses to watch and what they can do with what Lamar Jackson's been able to do with the ball in his hand.
And it just seems like every week he gets better. I mean,
you can't defend him.
2 weeks. Yeah. It's insane how much even against the Patriots almost seemed like they were kind of playing scared, and it takes a lot to make Belichick scared. But I think you should be right now because that's just how good Lamar Jackson's playing. So I want the running back that's on his team. I get it. He got 13 rushing attempts and 4 targets, but I mean that's what Aaron Jones is getting you, but he certainly is not seen as near the commodity that's more than Aaron Jones is giving you. Not so the commodity he is.
I'm going to let you in on a secret. I played against Mark Ingram in that league last week. 13 carries, 48 yards. That's roughly 3 points.
Yeah.
3 catches, 37 yards. That's roughly 2 points. That's 5 points. 5. He scores 2 touchdowns and put the stat total up to nearly 20 points. Only me this happens to. Well, no, it does. I know it happens to everyone out there, but you get the point. It's such a cruel thing. I'm so upset. It's almost funny. You got to sit back and you got to kind of chuckle about this. And we were talking a couple weeks ago. Yeah, I went to Twitter about my trade proposal. I went to the people I trust, and they confirmed my thought process. Ultimately, I pull the trigger on the deal. Ultimately, I'm responsible for the end outcome of it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So I don't get mad at Twitter for giving me bad advice. I don't go to the guys that I trust the most and say, you give me bad advice this week. No, because this is what I was thinking anyway. I was going to do this trade one way or the other. I thought it was a fantastic trade. Well, the numbers all made sense. The matchups made sense.
Yes.
I needed this for my bye week. You cannot predict injuries. There's certain things in fantasy football you cannot predict. You cannot predict Tyreek Hill getting 0 catches because he pulls his hammy on the 3rd play of the game. You cannot predict James Conner going down with an AC joint after being taken completely off the Steelers injury report.
Yep.
Unless I put him in my roster, then you could probably predict it.
Then it makes sense. But I'll give you a hot take, but that is – I still think that was a good trade. I don't think you can let – one of the things that we do so often is we let whatever the ends are decide whether the means were good or not. And I just don't think that is something we need. I think more often we need to say, here's the information we had at the time. Here is what – because you can't predict the future. If you could predict the future, you'd be making a lot more money, and you wouldn't be worried about this kind of stuff. You wouldn't be worried. You probably wouldn't even be setting teams on a roster like that. You'd be setting your 100 DraftKings lineups and making a lot of money. But we do that so often where we look back with hindsight, whether it comes to our starting lineups, whether it comes to trades we make, waiver wire things. And I think we just we either need to look and say, hey, was everything, did I consider everything I needed to? And if the answer is yes, and everything looked good, and it's just something like injury happened, then it's a good trade. Yeah. Or, hey, Phillip Lindsay is facing a really tough Bills defense. I might try to find somebody else to start this week. That makes sense. Sure, he can fall in the end zone 3 times if Denver goes into Buffalo and does really well. But that doesn't mean that it was a good idea to start him over somebody who might have had a better matchup. I think that's where we have to find a way to learn from our mistakes, but also not necessarily beat ourselves up over it too. So I think you made a good trade, even though the results of it I know isn't great.
Yeah, and like I said, I would do this trade 9 times out of 10 all over again.
Yeah.
And of course, 1 time out of 10, that's hindsight kicking in and saying, you should have known better.
Yeah.
But with everything we knew he came off the injury report, which is probably more important than anything else when you're looking at this trade. Yeah. He was off the injury report. That's telling us that he's probably close to 100% if he comes off. No one's 100% right now in fantasy. No one in the NFL is at 100%. No. Everyone's banged up. Everyone's nicked up. Amari Cooper is probably functioning at about 60% right now.
Yeah.
So I went in there thinking, okay, I got a guy who's rested, who's healing up from his shoulder injury. I have a week 12 bye issue problem I need to address. It was a perfect trade.
Yeah.
Just the results were not what I wanted.
Could you go out and possibly acquire – here's a big name let's talk about that people are talking about this week is Beau Scarborough. What do you say?
Do you really think you would feel confident in starting him above Jamal Williams and Todd Gurley this week? Beau Scarborough.
Confident is a funny word there because I don't think you could ever feel confident. But I will say Washington is about as good a matchup as you can ask for. And if he's going to get 14, 15 carries against Washington, he's not going to get targets. He's not going to be utilized in the passing game. But in a desperate situation, he's certainly a guy to consider. Washington has been very bad against running backs. They've given up over 20 points the last 3 weeks to the running backs that they face. That's Le'Veon Bell. That's must have been Devin Singletary in combination with Frank Gore with Buffalo, and I guess the Vikings, of course, with Dalvin Cook. But actually, in most weeks, they've given up over 20 points. So now that's to the whole team, and who knows what kind of, I guess, opportunity share.
Yeah. So just kind of looking at touching base here with Washington, they allowed just about 10 points to Darren Sproles. They allowed 16 points roughly to Elliott. Wayne Gallman went for almost 20.
Yeah.
Sony Michel hit him up for 15. That was the same week that Bolden scored there, and he got 9.5.
The ghost.
Then they're pretty solid for. They shut the. That was that ugly game against San Francisco, that weather game.
Oh, so like no one hurricane.
No one performed at all there.
Yeah.
And then obviously, like you said, Delvin Cook went over for 20. Singletary about 17. Le'Veon Bell about 14. And even Bilal Powell was hitting that hole hard against the Redskins. He actually looked better than Bell, in my opinion, running the ball.
Yeah.
But here's I'm gonna play devil's advocate. You get one claim. You're the number one priority guy in your waiver. Are you looking at Beau Scarborough, or are you looking over to maybe Indianapolis here and considering Jonathan Williams? Jonathan Williams had an insane game. One of those games that hooks you as an owner. You're like, yeah, let's get him. He was running the ball. Yeah. 13 carries, 116 yards. Now, the Jaguars have been brutal against the run. Let's call it the way it is. But the Texans have given up points to running backs as well, especially in the passing game. We're looking at the Texans here. They've given up let's go all the way back here. Kamara had 15 points. Fournette had 8 at one point, so not a big deal. Reggie Boniface, or am I looking at that correct? Eckler had 9. McCaffrey went for about 23. Devontae Freeman went for about 13. And we kind of skip. And then obviously they had that game against Baltimore where Gus Edwards and Mark Ingram both performed well, right? So against the Texans. So would you be looking more towards Jonathan Allen, who also had 1 catch for 31 yards and a touchdown? 13 carries, 116 yards. We know that Marlin Mack is out with a broken hand. So for your news and notes, Marlin Mack is out with a broken hand. He's going to miss several weeks, probably cutting into your playoffs for sure. I can't see Marlon Mack being back until at least week 14, 15. Give him 2-3 weeks to heal that hand. So his fantasy season is pretty much done. And even now, I like the kid Jordan Wilkins. I like him a lot, but he's hurt right now too. So they're basically running with Nyheim Hines, who's going to be the primary pass catching back, and Jonathan Williams could see a bulk of the snaps and carries this week.
Now, to add to the news and notes, Jordan Wilkins did get in a limited practice today. So it's very possible that he could play. So that would take the shine off of Jonathan Williams a lot for me. Jonathan Williams, former Saint, by the way. I like Jonathan Williams.
Who hasn't Jonathan Williams played for the last 5 years?
True. He's always had a guy that had a lot of talent, and so there's a lot of me that likes him. But I think that the backfield will be a little bit too crowded. And to your point, the fact that the Houston Texans have been vulnerable to pass-catching running backs makes me think that Nyheim Hines could have a bigger role.
Okay, so let's take this one step further here for the people. Nyheim Hines, Jonathan Williams, or Beau Scarborough. All of them should be on your waiver wire.
Yeah, all those guys. So first, I think I'd maybe want Jalen Samuels over all those guys. I know the production has been limited, but he was coming off some injury stuff. I think there's a chance against the Bengals that he may have the best game out of all of them. So if he happens to still be there, I might consider him more. But of the rest, man, it's hard. It's hard for me not to say Scarborough. I think the backfield could be a bit of a mess there in Indianapolis. I don't think you can trust any report that's going to come out. We don't have a history of what did they do with Marlon Mack out, other than what they had to do on the fly this past week. So, man, Beau Scarborough at one point was sitting there behind Ezekiel Elliott as a guy that we kind of liked in case Elliott went down. He's not going to catch the ball. He's not going to be exciting. But he's got a really good matchup, and he's probably going to get 15 touches, 15 carries.
I'm just glad that we saw him in the field in Detroit because I thought he was still running his 40, to be honest with you. But if we break these numbers, because that's what people like to hear. They like the numbers. I'm not a big numbers guy. I usually go by the eye test. But let's go to the numbers for the people that are smarter than me, because that's how it breaks down. Detroit, Scarborough had 49% of the snaps. J.D. McKissick still figured in at 23. Ty Johnson still figured in. So you have a full out, in my opinion, still running back by committee. Indianapolis, you got Jonathan Williams. He came in at 46. Marlin Mack at 31. So that kind of shows the injury there. I still think Jonathan Williams will have more snaps percentage than Beau Scarborough next week.
But does Wilkins run ahead of him, and does him being back throw a monkey wrench into that? That's kind of and if you just think about the matchups, I wonder if they just put the ball more into Jacoby Brissett's hands and have Nyheim Hines back there. Now, I don't know what kind of a pass blocker Nyheim Hines is. It might be better to have one of those other guys out there. I'd have to do a little bit of research into that. That's not something I've done yet, but that's Nyheim Hines could end up with 30, 40, 45% of the snaps, depending on how things go.
Yeah, it's going to be an interesting game. I know I'm going to be pulling for the Texans hard in that game because the Raiders have the tiebreaker over the Colts. That said, I don't know what the game script's going to be here. I would like to think the Texans are the better of the two teams. They should control the scoreboard a little bit more than Indianapolis, but we've written Indianapolis off all season, and they've been a very solid team for the most part. I think when Andrew Luck went down, I think most of us kind of wrote off Jacoby Brissett and the Colts.
Sure did.
And he's done nothing. And Paris Campbell, he was out. Like T.Y. Hilton, he's been out too this season. They've been doing it with kind of a lunch pail kind of group of guys here. Zach Pascal's been an outstanding find on your waiver wire, especially in deeper leagues where you have to roster 2 or 3 flex guys. He's been money for you all season.
Yeah. Another guy that is kind of coming into, we think about late November, December as Sony Michel season, right? Now that has not proven to be the case yet. We'll see how that goes. But another guy who did really well at the end of last year that we should not forget about is Tarik Cohen, who is another guy who might be somebody might have given up on him. But I've said for a while, and they've tried to make David Montgomery happen, and David Montgomery's good, but he's got that ankle injury. There's some things about him that we'll see how things work out, how healthy he is, and if they go back to him. But to me, watching the Bears play this past weekend, Tarik Cohen is electric when he gets the ball, and his snaps were up probably because of Montgomery's limited practices and some of his injuries. But he's a guy that last year, towards the very end of the year, when they really needed wins, when they needed yards, they went to Tarik Cohen a lot. And I wouldn't be surprised they get to that point now where they say, hey, we really need to win. It's desperation time. We can't play for a first round pick because we already gave it to the Raiders. So I expect them to go all in, and I wouldn't be surprised to see Chase Daniel there, and Chase Daniel checking down to Tarik Cohen a decent amount. Yeah,
and here's the thing though, Tarik Cohen had like 59% of the snaps there. He out-snapped David Montgomery, but Montgomery still had 17 touches and targets compared to Cohen's 15. So the Bears still want to get Montgomery going
for sure.
And I don't know if the Bears are in a position, they got nothing to lose right now.
Yeah.
The more games they lose, the more they're giving the Raiders in that trade for Khalil Mack.
Yep.
So they're not tanking by any stretch because they got nothing to do. They can't tank. There's nothing there to tank for. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
So they have to go out there and still perform. And I think this is going to be a full split the rest of the year. I think it's going to be a 50-50 kind of thing. Tarik Cohen's still going to give you the big play potential.
Yeah.
But Montgomery, I'm a consistent guy. I like my consistency in there. I think David Montgomery still offers me the most consistency going forward. Now, where I'm in a position right now where I'm kind of on the edge of the playoffs and I don't know where I'm going to go. Like I could easily make the playoffs and I could easily miss the playoffs in a couple of leagues. That's maybe where I'm going with Tarik Cohen. I need that big play potential to get me in. But if I'm sitting in a nice spot that I've kind of got comfortable here, I'm sitting in a 2, 3, 4 in the playoff kind of potential. David Montgomery's still my guy.
Yeah. I was just looking up, and you talk about being consistent. David Montgomery has had 3 weeks this season with double-digit fantasy points.
So he's been consistently bad.
He's been pretty consistently mediocre, and it's not like Tarik Cohen has been much better. Now, if I take that out and I go PPR, I'm curious how many weeks Tarik Cohen has had double digits. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. He's had 5 PPR weeks of double-digit points. So you actually you could make a point that he's a little now in yards where you have return yardage. I've got him in one of those leagues, and I really like him. But like you said, I think he does have the bigger ceiling. And just looking at his usage, his snaps have gone up here. It had kind of gone down weeks 8 and 9. That's when David Montgomery had really started to take off. They gave him a lot of touches those 2 weeks. But since then, Detroit came into town. He got 30. The Rams came in. He got 45. If that injury is still bothering David Montgomery, Tarik Cohen could keep seeing this playing time. Now, a lot of that's ifs and all that. And, yeah, if you've got more consistent options, use them by all means. But if you're searching the waiver wire for guys that you can plug in and you need somebody, you got a tough matchup like you're talking about, you need somebody with a high ceiling, I think he could have that ceiling.
So I'm going to go again and play the devil's advocate. The old football coach in me is kicking in here. Mm-hmm. Where do the Bears play?
In Chicago.
In Chicago.
Mm-hmm.
What's the weather usually like in November and December in Chicago?
Yeah, it's cold.
It's cold. You want to pound the rock. You want to go up between the tackles. Now, unfortunately, the Bears' offensive line is trash. If anything, I think the struggles this year are probably more on that offensive line than they are even on Trubisky. And Trubisky's been bad. So I'm not giving him a pass here, but that line has not been good either. And if I'm still Chicago Bears football, I still want to pound that rock. And David Montgomery is the guy I'm going to pound that rock with, not Tarik Cohen. So I think you're going to see David Montgomery get more touches as the season continues to progress and the weather begins to change over Tarik Cohen. But if you're looking for that big play, Tarik Cohen is that prayer player for you, in my opinion.
Yeah, and certainly that would be the prominent thought. And I was trying to find his 2018 stats, and I'm struggling to find his 2018 stats. I don't know if you've got a good website that could find that. Everywhere I'm going is going to 2019. But I remember Tarik Cohen having a very good here we go, 2018. I remember him having a good end to his season.
Do you?
I'd be curious. Yeah. Now, some of that might be because I'm in a return yard league. Week 13, 12 catches for 156 yards, 8 rushes, 30 yards. Week before, 7 catches, 45 yards.
Okay, so keep going. Now, no, talk to me about playoffs here. Talk about his fantasy playoffs.
Week 12, he had 7 catches. Week 13,
we're not in the playoffs. We're not in the playoffs at that point.
No, fantasy playoffs but we're talking about things being cold. It's cold now in Chicago. 4 catches, 20 yards. He started getting, he's getting, 10, 20, 13, 10. He's getting that double-digit opportunities. And they had a guy, by the way, named Jordan Howard on that team who is David Montgomery better than Jordan Howard?
I would argue no this season, but the Bears obviously did not like Jordan Howard last year.
Yeah.
And he ran for 1,000 yards.
Yeah.
Now, if I'm looking at Tarik Cohen and I'm taking away the touchdown here in week 15 against the Packers, he had 9 carries, 69 yards, 4 catches, 20 yards, 89 all-purpose yards. Not the greatest week.
And a touchdown. You've got it.
No, that's week 15. So that was against the Rams in week 14. Week 15, 21 and 31 with the touchdown.
Mm-hmm.
Week 16, when your fantasy championship is on the line.
Yeah, it was awful.
In San Francisco, 6 carries, 12 yards, 1 catch, 7 yards.
So he's not going to be. So first of all, you realize he's now going to score like 35 points this week because of what you're saying.
Absolutely, because I'm bashing him. That's what's happening. But guess what? I'm not playing him anywhere this week.
So definitely go pick him up. That's what that's what we're saying. But I'm not saying he's going to compete with Alvin Kamara for a first-round pick next year. I'm just saying we're talking about Jordan Wilkins and Beau Scarborough and Jalen Samuels. I think Tarik Cohen offers you more than any of those guys do.
Well, here's what we're talking about right now. We're talking about a rough week for your bye weeks. Yeah. We're talking about Tyreek Hill not playing. We're talking about Keenan Allen, Melvin Gordon out. We're talking Kyle Kirk not playing. We're talking Stephon Diggs, Adam Thielen, Kirk Cousins, Dalvin Cook, all out of your rosters, and you're looking for these bodies. Yeah, Tarik Cohen is definitely in a play for a flex play spot. I don't know if I like him more than David Montgomery, but that's me.
Yeah. I mean, neither one would make RB1 or probably not even RB2 status right now. Like neither one are guys that you feel very confident about. Just saying, hey, Tarik Cohen might not be a bad ad off the waiver, and just see what happens.
And I like you said, I had a guy last week who, what's up, homie? Who picked up Tarik Cohen. He has been picked up last week. Tarik Cohen's probably owned just about everywhere you go. John Brown's another guy that's owned everywhere.
Oh, John Brown's amazing. I love John Brown.
He's a guy, if you can trade for him, he's been the second most consistent receiver behind Michael Thomas throughout this whole season that nobody knows about.
Yeah.
Try and go and trade for him. I might even be tempted. Good Lord, help me out here because I'm in a playoff push in this league, like I was telling everyone here. I'd be almost tempted to trade Tyreek Hill for John Brown right now. You cannot win a championship unless you get in the playoffs.
So I would definitely trade, I think, right now, thinking about this year, and Dynasty would be.
And this is just redraft. Sorry, I'm talking redraft. There's no way I'm trading Tyreek Hill for John Brown in Dynasty.
No,
it ain't happening.
I was going to give you another name. I was going to say DJ Moore.
Oh, yeah, I love me some DJ Moore.
I love DJ Moore. And honestly, like I think he's going to end up being a second-round pick next year. If you look at his schedule, it's ridiculous. He's got a lot of great matchups coming up. The way they use him, he just looks so good. He is going to be, I think, a redraft and dynasty second round pick next year based on the finish I expect him to have. He might already be there.
Yeah, and I might even be tempted. Like you said, we're talking about possibly trading Tyreek Hill. Maybe I go find that DJ Moore owner right now and make a little swap here and redraft. And you know what? I'm not even opposed to making a Tarik Hill for DJ Moore trade in Dynasty. I think DJ Moore is in the solid top 15 wide receivers in Dynasty. Like I haven't done my Dynasty rankings. I probably won't do them until I'm officially out of all my playoff leagues, which might be sooner than later. And I guarantee you, I'm pretty sure DJ Moore, like if I'm running the list through my head right now, I don't know if there are 15 wide receivers more valuable than DJ Moore is right now.
There's the thing that is the only reason why you even have a chance of getting him for some of those guys right now is he only has one touchdown this season. And no one who's got as many targets as him or more has only one touchdown. Now, I take that back. Tyler Boyd actually has the exact same amount of targets and only one touchdown. But anybody with more targets than he has this season has a minimum of 4 touchdowns. I think if you also give DJ Moore 4 or 5 touchdowns this season, he is certainly a guy that you would be really excited about. And I think that's only going to go up based on what I expect from him at the end of this year.
So I just read here right now. I don't know if this changes your Jalen Samuels outtake here, but Benny Snell has returned to practice as well.
Benny Snell. Yeah, they love Benny Snell. Now, does that hurt Trey Edmonds or does it hurt Jalen Samuels?
Well, if you go back to week 6, which is probably the last time we really seen Benny Snell play, those 17 carries for 75 yards and a catch for 14 yards.
That's week 6?
That's week 6, yeah, against the Chargers.
Mm-hmm.
He could be someone that I may be valuing more than Jalen Samuels, depending on what his practice looks like this week. If he's looking like he's 100%, and we know, let's call it the way it is, they haven't ruled James Conner out yet, but there's a very strong possibility that James Conner will not be playing this week against the Bengals. Benny Snell, he's a guy I'm definitely considering playing in a flex position over Samuels and over anyone else that we talk. I might even take him over by your Scarborough guy and our homie there, Jonathan Williams.
I'll take him over those guys. I mean, I'll take those guys over him still at this point, but I wouldn't mind having a wait and see on him and having him on my bench just in case he does take some of those Trey Edmonds carries. That's the only, Trey Edmonds has actually looked pretty good for who Trey Edmonds is. So that's a guy that we might be overlooking.
Yeah, it's a possibility. I've never been a big fan of him, but desperate times call for desperate measures, right? You got to try and find your way in. And we talked about it. Like, I'm looking at my one roster here, and I'm like, this is ugly. Like some of the leagues where I'm in, there's most of my leagues I'm comfortably in the playoffs, but the ones I'm right on the fringe, like the one we're talking about today, so many different things to talk about here that I'm trying to figure out what to do. I don't know, man. I don't know. Sorry, I missed what you said there.
Oh, yeah. Tell me about go through those options and
so the guys I'm considering starting this week in that league. Okay, let's just pull this up here real quick and see what we got. I know it's going to be Matt Ryan, probably a quarterback. Now at running back, it's James Conner who's going to be out. Todd Gurley, Miles Sanders. Miles Sanders is a boom or bust play, especially considering he's playing against the Seahawks this week in Philadelphia. But we don't know where Jordan Howard, what his status is going forward. If Jordan Howard is out again this week, he's definitely a guy I'm considering playing. Now, the Patriots did their homework on Miles Sanders last week, and they definitely knew that his big play potential is on that wheel route, running it on the outside. And they took that away. They did not allow him that opportunity. He only had the 2 catches. So the Seahawks, in my opinion, I think Miles Sanders has a better opportunity to bust a big play against the Seahawks than what he did against the Patriots, because the Patriots did their homework on him. They did their due diligence on him. And let's face it, against the Patriots, like we talk about this every week, they like to take away your best player.
Mm-hmm.
Miles Sanders is arguably the Eagles' best player right now, especially in the passing game, because he's the one who's going to beat you for the big play. Nelson Aguilar cannot catch a cold. He can't catch a baby out of a burning building. He can't do anything when the ball is touching his hands. We've seen that week in and week out. Zach Ertz, people would argue against me, saying he's the best player the Eagles have. He's been on a downward trajectory. Dallas Goedert's been picking up steam, trending highly every single week. So I would argue that Sanders was the best player, and he was the key to the Patriots' success of shutting down the Eagles. The Seahawks, on the other hand, I think offer you a new thing here, because if I look at what the Seahawks have done over the last few weeks against running backs, the guys that I'm really went off. Alvin Kamara had a huge week in week 3 against them.
Yeah.
Nick Chubb, he had a big week. Todd Gurley had a good week against the Seahawks. Ronald Jones in week 9 had a pretty solid week. He scored a touchdown. He had 67 yards rushing. That touchdown, 2 receptions as well. So Miles Sanders is in play for me. Maybe even it's a tough call here, because I'm looking at this, and Jamal Williams, Sanders, and Gurley are kind of my options at the running back position. At wide receiver, I'm looking at Davante Adams, who's you're going to play him regardless.
Yeah, he's in.
And then can you really trust Terrell Williams against the Jets? Terrell Williams, he's only getting 4 to 6 targets a week right now. 4 to 6 targets a week. He hasn't had 7 targets since week 4. That was the most he's had all season, was those 7 targets.
Yeah.
He's tough to trust. If he's not catching a touchdown, he's tough to trust in your lineup. Terry McLaurin, another guy I got in my lineup. He's got Dwayne Haskins at quarterback. You can't trust that. And I know you're playing against the Lions, and the Lions have given up big plays to wide receivers, and the Washington Redskins are moving McLaurin around, so he will not see Darius Slay a lot. He'll see some of them, but not a whole lot. But I got a lot of options here right now I don't trust.
So Davante Adams is in.
Yeah, that's all I know it's in. Maybe Todd Gurley.
Gurley is in, I think. I think your next best player maybe after that might be Terry McLaurin. I know you're not going to like that because of Dwayne Haskins. But Terry McLaurin, first of all, he looks fantastic. I mean, he really does. Like, he's a great wide receiver, and I can't wait till he hopefully gets a chance to play with better quarterbacks as he goes. But Dwayne Haskins looked like a fairly serviceable quarterback this week. He actually did not do terrible. He did target McLaurin a decent amount. And I don't know if you saw, but Dak Prescott put up like 450 yards against the Lions. Dwayne Haskins is not Dak Prescott, but can he put up 250?
Okay, let's back this train up. I love McLaurin as much as anyone. McLaurin is not Amari Cooper. He may be Michael Gallup right now. Yeah. The Washington Redskins offensive line is not the Dallas Cowboys offensive line. In fact, you can look at some of the sidelines, and Dwayne Haskins is pleading to this line, what can I do for you? What can I do to make you better? And the guys are like, will this guy shut up? Like, leave me alone. They were disinterested in their quarterback, trying to ask them what he can do to help them. Darius Geis, Adrian Peterson are not the same running back that Ezekiel Elliott is.
No.
They don't even have a tight end in Washington. Jeremy Sprinkle is no Jason Witten. And like you said, Dwayne Haskins, he ain't no Dak. So talk about Dak putting up 400 yards against the Lions and Dwayne Haskins putting up, what are we honestly thinking, 250 tops?
But if it's 250, so the Lions are up.
Okay, let's back this up in a little bit further. Of those yards, Terry McLaurin broke off a big one, right? He had a pretty solid, I can't remember what it was. Darius Geis had like a 45-yard touchdown pass too, I believe, right?
Yeah.
He had two big plays.
Yeah.
He had him almost 100 yards in 2 plays.
Yeah. Okay. We agree, though, that the Texans are bad at defending the pass. We agree that the Buccaneers are bad at defending the pass. The Lions are right there. If you look at the last 4 weeks, the Lions are the 3rd worst team at defending the pass. And so, I mean, that's not – obviously, Dak is in that group, but they gave up 21.45 points to wide receivers in Chicago, 22 to the Raiders, 33 to the Giants, 32 to the Vikings before that. They've been vulnerable. They have absolutely been one of the worst secondaries, one of the worst against defending wide receivers in the last 4 or 5 weeks. And look, I know it's not a passing. Look, we've spent a lot of time talking about the Redskins and the Bears offense here. But, yeah, to me, out of those options, I would trust McLaurin and his opportunity and his skill set and his role in the offense more than I would trust Tyrell Williams right now.
Right now, my lineup that I have kind of got preset is Matt Ryan, Todd Gurley, and Jamal Williams.
Yeah.
Davante Adams, Terry McLaurin, and Tyrell Williams with Greg Olsen in a make-or-break fantasy playoff matchup.
And you got Miles Sanders on the bench.
And Miles Sanders currently on my bench. Now, the only reason I got Jamal Williams in over Miles Sanders is because the Packers are playing the 49ers on Sunday night.
Mm-hmm.
I want to have a little bit of hope before the weekend ends.
Against the 49ers, too. Ooh.
Yeah, like I said, I don't got anything that's making me feel better about myself at all. Greg Olsen against the Saints is not a great matchup. Tyrell Williams against the Jets is a good matchup, but we've seen the target share for Tyrell Williams has not been great. Hunter Renfrow may be a better play there than Tyrell Williams. Terry McLaurin against the Lions, it was a fantastic matchup, except Washington sucks across the board. Davante Adams against the 49ers is a tough matchup on paper, but it's Davante Adams. I'm not too concerned about that. Bottom line is that pass rush, we've seen the Packers struggle against good pass rushes this year too, so that could be ugly. Sanders against Seattle looks like an okay matchup. Todd Gurley against the Ravens is not ideal. Like I might as well just drop my entire roster and just go waiver wire hunting for best possible matchups out there at this point.
Yeah. I think your biggest decision in all that to me is whether or not you play Miles Sanders over Jamal Williams.
And I probably will. When it's all said and done, I probably will play Miles Sanders over Jamal Williams. So Jamal Williams is going to go off this week.
There you go. Hey, the 49ers gave up a lot of points to Kenyon Drake, didn't they?
Yeah, 1 week, a few weeks back.
Yeah.
But I'm not too excited. Like the 49ers rush is only ranked like in middle of the pack. I think about 19, 20, 18, somewhere in there.
Mm-hmm.
And they've given up a couple big games. Like McCaffrey obviously had his big game. Kenny and Drake had his big game. Chris Carson had a solid game in week 10 against him. But Chris Carson also in week 10 had 89% of the snaps and a whole whackload of touches and targets to go with it because he had no competition from Rashad Penny, who should be dropped on everyone's roster because he's horrible. I almost swore, but I didn't. PG-13 here.
Yeah, they're in the bottom 10 at points allowed the last 3 weeks. Now they were excellent before that. But yeah, Cardinals, Seahawks, and Cardinals again. And I don't know. The IDP side better than I do, but obviously they had a big injury there in the linebacker core. How has that, you think that's affected their defense against the run game?
It's always going to affect it there. Fred Warner, though, is a solid linebacker. He can make up for a lot of things there. You look at and that front four. Like, are you kidding me right now? When Solomon Thomas is kind of like the odd man out, and you're running Nick Bosa, D Ford, Eric Armstead, DeForest Buckner, there's not a whole lot of room to run on that between the tackles. And Fred Warner is going to clean all that up. Now, where they could be a little susceptible, and I said this with Christian McCaffrey a couple weeks ago, is in that quick screen, bubble screen passing game from the running backs where Jamal Williams can catch. We've seen Jamal Williams catch the ball as well as Aaron Jones can catch the ball.
Mm-hmm.
So that's one thing to take a look at here as we move into this week. We look at Jamal Williams has 25 receptions this year, 25 receptions. And he's got 5 touchdown passes or receptions as well.
Yeah.
So he's making his hay basically in the receiving game, 25 catches at 166 yards and 5 touchdowns, 29 targets. So he's caught all but 4 targets so far.
Yeah.
So he's definitely an interesting play.
He's getting used a lot more in the passing game than Aaron Jones is, that's for sure.
And I've always said this, the one thing that sets Williams ahead of Jones in one aspect of the game is, in my opinion, the pass protection.
Mm-hmm.
I think the general feeling is Aaron Rodgers trusts Jamal Williams a little bit more on third down in the pass protecting game than Aaron Jones. Not that Aaron Jones has been bad. It's just I feel that Aaron Rodgers trusts Jamal Williams a little bit more in that aspect.
Okay, I got a question for you. Who's the number 1 wide receiver in Cleveland?
Jarvis Landry.
Yes, he is. Yes, he is. That's interesting. I mean, not a lot of people I think are paying attention to what's going on there. And, look, maybe you can speak to some of the coverages and things like that. But since their bye week, Jarvis Landry has out-targeted Odell Beckham 40 to 35. Same exact amount of receiving yards, 24 receptions for Landry, 19 for Odell. But Landry's gotten the end zone 3 times. He's getting red zone opportunities. Like he definitely he's outplaying him right now. I'm not going to say he's better than Odell, but he's outplaying.
No, he's definitely not. And Odell's pulling a lot of that coverage over too and opening up the game for Jarvis Landry. And people look straight at the numbers there and they say, well, Jarvis Landry's the wide receiver 1 because he's outperforming Odell Beckham. Well, that's not necessarily the case. Odell Beckham is drawing double coverage. He's doubling the bracket coverage from the safety. People are more aware of him. And they know Jarvis Landry's not beating him deep because he does a lot of the stuff over the middle, short passing game, quick passing game. The Browns, just like the Bears, have a bad offensive line. Mm-hmm. And the best way to make up for a bad offensive line is that quick passing game. Like we talked about, screens, quick hitters, and that's where Jarvis Landry makes his heyday. Now, the one thing with Odell Beckham Jr., you give him a 3-yard slant, he could take it 97 yards, just like that, right? So, but I think that's where we're seeing Jarvis Landry make his hay is in that short passing game where he's getting the targets, especially in PPR. He's getting those extra receptions that's putting him up over Odell Beckham as far as stats and numbers go.
Right. Yeah. It's when you look at the matchups the last 4 weeks, really maybe the toughest for on the number 1 wide receiver. You got New England, you got Denver, you got Buffalo, and you got Pittsburgh. That's a really tough 4-game stretch. Whereas the next 5 games, Miami, Pittsburgh, Cincinnati, Arizona, then Baltimore to finish it in your fantasy Super Bowl, which that could be tough as well. But I think the next 4 weeks look a lot better for Odell than the last 4 weeks have. But really interesting that Jarvis Landry has even out-targeted him over that time.
Mm-hmm. Jarvis Landry's always been that kind of player, though. He's always got targets. He's always got the receptions. The touchdowns haven't always been there, but he's a perennial 100 reception receiver almost year in, year out. So that, it shouldn't really surprise us there because that's what his game is based on. Odell's always been the big play.
Yeah.
Always a big play. He's always a threat to score whenever he touches the ball. And then we've seen him, like I said, we've seen him on those 3-yard quick hitters, taking it to the house. We've seen miraculous catches downfield. It's not because Eli Manning was a good quarterback. Eli Manning didn't even know where he was throwing half the time. His eyes were shut. His head was tilted. It didn't matter.
Didn't matter.
It didn't matter. He just threw it up there, and Odell Beckham went up and got it. We haven't seen that with Baker Mayfield because Baker Mayfield is more like a Brett Favre. He thinks he can fit everything into that window.
Yes.
And it's almost like when you want to throw a precise pass, you're almost giving Beckham Jr. less of an opportunity to make a play on the ball than what Eli Manning was with throwing up the prayer, so to speak, because Odell will high point it. He's got great body control. He can make plays on anything. But if you try and throw a rocket in there, it's easier for the defender to make a play on that ball.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think the offense is kind of turning around a little bit for them too. Baker's played well the last couple of weeks. Miami is a really good get right kind of game anyway. So that could be. They made Josh Allen look like a Hall of Famer last week. Hopefully Baker Mayfield can look the same way this week. And then you look at his schedule too. You think about the same things that I just said about Odell. He's got Cincinnati and Arizona right there in the fantasy playoffs, weeks 14 and 15. He could be a guy that you end up utilizing in your roster where you thought maybe the ship had sailed on being able to use him this year. But like I've got this week, I got a decision to make between Baker Mayfield against Miami or Dak Prescott against New England. And I think I'm going to go Baker.
Yeah, I'm still leaning Dak. Just on the consistency, I can definitely see why you'd make that argument for Baker Mayfield. There's no doubt about it. It's Miami. It's the Miami Dolphins.
Yeah,
let's be honest. But I think the end decision for me is going to be watching the practice report of Amari Cooper here and following closely how significant of an injury he has. Plus, we know that's going to be a tough matchup against New England. Now, the one thing that we saw with the Ravens, the Patriots against a good offense, their defense doesn't look as good. Now, the Eagles were not a good offense. They don't. Alshon Jeffrey is no Amari Cooper. Nelson Aguilar is definitely no Michael Gallup.
Nope.
Miles Sanders, as much as I love the kid, he's not Ezekiel Elliott.
Not Zeke. Nope.
You know what I'm saying? And then there's an argument about Dak and Wentz. Well, right now, Dak is better than Carson Wentz. So this is probably the best offense outside of obviously the Ravens, because I don't even know what to call that Ravens team right now, because I'm still trying to digest what they do, because they don't have wide receivers. It's a good run game that they base everything off of, and you can't take away Lamar Jackson because he can beat you with his arm and he can beat you with his legs. But with the Dallas Cowboys, Dak gives you that same thing. He gives you that mobile passer who's going to beat you with his legs, beat you with the passing game. I actually think Dallas wins this game, and I think Dak can throw for 300.
You think Dallas wins the game?
I think Dallas is going to win this game.
The same team that got blown out by the Jets.
The same team that got blown up by the Jets.
And almost lost to the Lions last week.
Yeah.
Man, that's might be as bold as the
no matter who you pick in this game, you're going to piss off a lot of people. Because Cowboys Nation is going to be all over me. Patriots Nation is going to be all over me. It don't matter who I pick. I'm going to take Dallas in this game because, well, quite frankly, I just can't pick New England.
Dallas could be viewing that almost as their Super Bowl. I mean, they definitely they need to win.
They do. They're only a game up on the Philadelphia Eagles right now for that division. And you're going to have to win that division to make the playoffs.
Yeah.
There's no ands, ifs, or buts about it right now because the rest of the NFC is too good.
Boy,
I'm calling it right here. You hear it on the show right now. The Dallas Cowboys are going to win 31-24.
Woo! 31-24. 31 points. Has that defense given up 31 points yet?
What they give up against the Ravens?
Yeah, I was curious. That's what I was going to go look at.
But here's the thing. The Cowboys' offensive line is just as good as the Ravens' offensive line. Dak is probably better. Dak is probably an upgrade over, or not Dak. Zeke is probably an upgrade over Ingram.
Yeah,
Dak can do a lot of the same things as Lamar Jackson. Not quite as dynamic, but he can do a lot of the same things, and he's probably a little bit better of a passer. Wide receivers wise, Gallup and Cooper are way better than Miles Boykin, Willie Snead, and whoever else the Ravens throw out there as decoys. At tight end, Jason Witten is still Jason Witten. I don't care who you are. Mark Andrews is still better than Jason Witten, but yeah. I'm okay taking this. And the Dallas Cowboys defense is pretty solid. They got a couple linebackers there that can move. That defensive line with Michael Bennett now, with DeMarcus Lawrence and Robert Quinn, they can get pressure on it. We've seen the one thing that Tom Brady has had over the challenges is when that pressure's in his face. When you push that pocket, because he cannot move, he cannot extend the plays like he once could. He's never been a mobile quarterback. He's always been a quick release quarterback. Mm-hmm. And the best there's been, you can argue the greatest of all time there, as many people do. I don't, but there's no arguing how good he's been.
Yeah.
But he's also getting up there in age. And he didn't impress me last week. What did New England do to you for you against a very solid Eagles front four?
Yeah, I mean, they scored 17 points. I mean, there was definitely a lot left to be desired, and sure seemed like Tom Brady was disappointed as well. I mean, he definitely sounded pretty upset with his offense. He said he was just tired, but I think he was frustrated. Just to go back and answer that question, the Ravens scored 37. No one else has scored more.
They haven't played anyone else.
No one else has scored more than 14.
They haven't played anyone.
You're right. It's a lot of nobodies.
The next best offense they've played was the Buffalo Bills, for crying out loud.
the Bills or the Eagles even. I mean, you're right. It's pretty bad.
It is, and we're anointing this. Everyone but me basically has been anointing the Patriots as the best defense we've seen for a long time. They haven't played anyone.
Well, we're gonna find out. The next 3 weeks, we're gonna find out because they got the Cowboys, Texans, and Chiefs. So we'll find out the next 3 weeks how good they are. This is the test.
Exactly here. And like I said, I do think the Dallas Cowboys are going to pull this one off against the New England Patriots. I still think New England's a team to beat in the AFC.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. I mean, if Kansas City could round back into form of what they were last year, then they could have a shot. But it's the way New England's playing. Like you said, we'll see. If they go this next 3 weeks and they lose 2 out of 3, then that's gonna. The AFC is gonna be wide open.
And you know the best part of this show, we had like no script of what we were going with. We pounded out at about an hour and 45 minutes right now. We're getting close to wrapping up. Jim couldn't make it here last minute, so unfortunately we didn't get him out there. But judging by the 3 people who've tuned in, it's not a big. No one's going to worry about that too much. We'll hopefully get Jim over here, Fantasy Taz, back on the show here in the next couple weeks here. Sometimes the schedules just don't line up and things change on the fly.
Yep.
We're going to wrap up the show here right now. What's your bold prediction for Week 12? I've already said the Dallas Cowboys are going to beat down the Patriots.
I said the Bengals are going to beat the Steelers. So that's fine.
The Bengals over the Steelers in the toilet bowl, so to speak.
Yep.
The Cowboys knock off the Patriots. Who's your one play this week, though, that no one's playing that you're going to play?
Oh, that's a tough question. I might need a little bit more research on that. Well, Jacoby Brissett is a quarterback that, especially if you're streaming quarterbacks, the Texans have been really bad. Obviously, you saw what Lamar Jackson did against them, but they've been beat up by some really bad quarterbacks all year. So I think the quarterback position, I really like Jacoby Brissett. He's potentially available in a decent amount of leagues, and he's a guy that you could certainly go after. At running back, my boy Beau Scarborough facing those Redskins. That's a guy. If you're desperate, that's a guy. You got some bye weeks. He might be able to give you some value. I really, really think that Jameson Crowder and Demaryius Thomas could have a good week against the Raiders. Those are 2 guys on the wide receiver side. Tight end, I really like what Ross Dwelly did last week. The matchup isn't quite as good, but I really like the role that the tight end has in that offense. He's a guy you can potentially look at. And Ryan Griffin is another one, not to pick on your Raiders and love the Jets so much, but with Chris Herndon out of the way, he's a guy that could be a deeper play. But pay attention to my Twitter as the week goes on. And I'll have some other options too. So.
Yeah, I'm going to throw a couple more out here. Jarvis Landry, revenge week against the Dolphins. That should be a no-brainer for you guys to be starting right now.
Yep.
Randall Cobb, my opponent is starting Randall Cobb against me right now, so he's a no-brainer.
No doubter.
Jason Witten at tight end, my opponent's also starting him against me right now, so he's a go against the Patriots.
Yep.
What else we got here? I'm just kind of looking over my roster of my opponents here this week. Brian Hill. It's Brian Hill's week this week, guys. He's in the starting lineup against me as well. So those are some guys you want to get in your lineup against me. And Jameis Winston against the Falcons.
Yeah. Calvin Ridley. That's another guy that you might be a little frustrated with. He had a great week last week. You got to get him in your lineup against the Bucs this week.
Absolutely. We thought he was going to go off last week a little bit because the week before he was. Well, here's the thing. I played him the week before, so he went off.
Well, what changed, and we talked about this right here on the podcast, is we talked about Austin Hooper, his breakout at the beginning of this year, really limiting what Calvin really could do. And with him out, that we could really see him come through. I don't know what Hooper's status is right now, but I think Ridley going against this Bucs defense, I think that's money.
So the last update I have on Austin Hooper is he's trending in the right direction. Originally, he was supposed to be out about 4 weeks with that MCL sprain.
Mm-hmm.
He's trending in the right direction. He has not been out yet. They haven't said he's out. He's expected to be sidelined about a month. Let's just kind of keep on going here. He does have a chance to suit up Thursday, so for practice. So there's an opportunity there to keep an eye on. And if Hooper misses, trust me, Jaden Graham and Luke Stalker are not worth picking up.
Yeah, no.
They combined for 2 targets in Week 11.
No.
So Hooper's definitely got to keep an eye on. I don't expect him to play this week, but he's definitely something to keep an eye on. Not because you're going to play him this week coming off an injury, but because it could affect Calvin Ridley.
Yeah. Hey, so the more we go here, DK Metcalf, that's another guy that I really, really, really like going against that Eagles team. Now, they played really well against the Patriots, but they've been very vulnerable in that secondary all season. So Tyler Lockett, I'm really interested to see how he practices the rest of the week. Scary injury, had to go to the hospital. Really scary when you consider they talked about maybe compartment syndrome. Do you remember the last time we heard about that?
No.
Hakeem Nicks. That is what a lot of people really credit his downfall to, is that compartment syndrome. So I'm not saying that's what's going to happen here with Tyler Lockett, but I'm a little scared of that. I don't know if it's been ruled out that that's what it is or not. I'll have to go double check. But DK Metcalf, his role in that offense is growing, and I like him this week against the Eagles too.
And just to update you on T.Y. Hilton, he was a non-participant today.
Oh, Lockett.
Yeah, I was telling you T.Y. Hilton was a non-participant.
Oh, okay.
Just because we were talking about Jacoby Brissett earlier about being able to play. Hilton did not practice again today, so.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't expect Lockett to practice much this week if he does come back as well.
Says he expects to play. But, yeah, I would not be surprised if Metcalf leads that wide receiver 4 targets.
So, the play of the week, Josh Gordon.
Or James O'Shaughnessy. No, what's the is it O'Shaughnessy? Who's the tight end that's come out of nowhere for them?
For Hollister?
Hollister, yes. There you go.
Jacob Hollister. Ooh, Josh Gordon is a free agent in my league.
Hey.
Guess who's getting picked up right now? Tyrell Williams is getting dropped.
Interesting.
Gold, you got any better options right now?
No.
Josh Gordon against the Eagles?
Yeah, I like it. How much did he play last week? He got a couple of pretty big targets.
Yeah, I really don't have many other options there. So I'm going to put a waiver claim in for Josh Gordon because I own him everywhere, and I'm a sucker for punishment. And with that said, that's Calvin and Hobby. I'm Dingus4, Matt Donnelly. Check us out at the dynastyvipers.com. Calvin's got his box score scouting hopefully coming out here in the next day or two, preferably before Thursday. And I'll get that up and loaded up on the website as soon as possible. Be Martzy there. He's probably going to have a waiver wire up there for you to go check out here. And you know what? When in Texas, go find yourself a nice yellow room with a bull vine on the wall.
Yes.
And this is episode 12 of the Dynasty Vipers ViperCast. Tune in next week. You got anything? No? We're good? We gone!